Yankees lose.
Hits it in the air to right. Back at the wall, and the White Sox win it.
Stretch. Get on back there. They look up. You can put it on the board. Yes. Yes.
Welcome back, everybody, to 3 Up, 3 Down, Star 6 Media's own MLB baseball podcast. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, as has the baseball season, but as the end of February has hit, and as it being March 1st, today's recording date, it is the start of MLB spring training. We do have a few things to recap on today's episode, a few final signings to cover, as we did miss after our last episode, which was in the beginning of December. We're going to talk a little spring training, some rule changes for this new 2023 season, and an exciting World Baseball Classic that we have in store for us on the horizon. But first, I've seen him a lot. He's a good friend of mine. We've been doing other podcasts together, Slot Shot Podcast, a hockey podcast, also brought to you by Star 6 Media. But he, under his baseball alias, Northside_Sox, Alex, pleasure to have you back in studio. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I've kind of been hibernating from the baseball world. So if you follow me on Twitter, I'll be back to active soon. But yeah, also just kind of like, I don't know, I've been low-key on baseball. There's other stuff happening, but it's good that it's back, and I'm excited. I kind of felt like spring training just all of a sudden was here. I guess that means a quick winter, which is always good. And I don't know, I'm really excited for World Baseball Classic. I've been seeing like some hype videos about that, and it's going to be sweet. I think the field of players is one of the best it's ever been. And in terms of like intriguing teams, it's pretty exciting. So yeah, I'm excited that baseball's happening. And it's also like the other thing that's cool about the World Baseball Classic is like that eats up the hardest part of spring training. When you're like 3 weeks out from opening day and you're like dying, you're like, come on, let's get going. Now you have like this competitive baseball with a lot of the top players. A lot of teams have a player playing, which is always fun. So it's kind of an awesome start to the baseball year. So I'm very excited.
No, I think you're completely right. I think the fact is they get to play some competitive environment in the lead up to the regular season starting, and they get to represent their countries. So no one loves to do that more than these baseball players, because obviously it hasn't been in the Olympics until the most recent Summer Games. So it's something to represent your country means a lot to these baseball players, and the World Baseball Classic has led to a great example. You see some guys in some unfamiliar faces, or some familiar faces in unfamiliar countries, at least in baseball world. But you'll see some exciting people playing in the World Baseball Classic. It seems like all the U.S. stars have turned out, all the Cubans, Dominicans.
Everyone's playing. I think everyone who can play is playing.
Yeah, even the guys that have maneuvered their citizenships and teams that they can represent, if they can play, they're playing. So the fact is the World Baseball Classic will be exciting. We will touch on that a little bit towards the end of the podcast. So let's hop right into it. The MLB free agency period. Obviously, it kind of went on throughout the winter. Our last episode, like I talked about, was the most recent big news was Aaron Judge had just signed his contract. Then also Alex, as I will give you props to, Xander Bogaerts had headed west to the West Coast to the San Diego Padres. So that was another big signing that did occur. But the fact is, I want to touch on a few more guys that did re-sign and sign to new places since we've last talked. And you know, we have posted. I had a short out there, kind of segue with the saga of Carlos Correa and what kind of happened between the three teams that attempted to sign the coveted free agent, but it ended up with him returning to the Minnesota Twins hockey for 6 years, $200 million. Carlos Correa stayed in Minnesota after potentially signing with the Giants, after potentially signing with the Mets. He stays in the Central. He is a Twin. Not thrilled about it as a Sox fan, but keeps Minnesota very competitive. Keeps their season kind of much more in reach, because you have a Central division that is kind of up for grabs between the three teams of the Guardians, White Sox, and the Twins. This continues a potential another playoff run for this Twins team. What do you think on Correa staying in the Central and staying with the Twinkies?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the weirdest free agent sagas I've ever seen in any sport, really. I don't think I've ever seen a player get rejected from 2 contracts because of a medical and then still sign a $200 million deal. That's kind of crazy. I mean, I think if you're signing a player 2 teams passed up on because of their medical history, you're committing $200 million. That's terrifying, but at the same time, you're getting Carlos Correa. And if you're the Twins, realistically, the only way you're getting a player of that caliber in free agency is if 2 other teams say no. Mm-hmm. Or you give him like that deal they gave him last offseason, which was just the best prove-it deal possible.
Yep.
It was a prove-it deal with guaranteed money on it. So,
and he still is walking away with $200 million. So it's not like he completely lost out on what he was hoping for. He still took a gamble, and I still would say it paid off.
Yeah, I mean, I think he lost $100 million this offseason.
There's some truth to that.
I think he lost $100 million from 2 medicals, which is a pretty big blow. But it's kind of going to be something we just watch now.
Yep.
What is going to what is wrong with his back? Is there something wrong with his back? If he has a healthy year next year or this year, are we wondering if it's just completely fine, or is it something that comes up? I don't know. I don't know what to think about this, because obviously it's not often you see. I don't think I've ever seen a player sign a $300 million contract and have their medical cancel it.
Yeah,
your team was fully in on them, and the medical was too bad to commit.
And there was a lot of talks that I believe the Mets and the Giants used the same medical. They used the same doctor and consulted with the same doctor. Had their own doctors look at it, and the teams just couldn't get past the fact that there was some issues leading up with. Was it his back or his knee?
I think it's his back.
So like we said, unfortunately he missed out on $100 million. Still made $200. I still see it as a win-win situation for Correa. He stays as a Twin, doesn't have to move. So a nice situation for his family. Moving on to the next coveted free agent that came off the board, Carlos Rodon, our former White Sox beloved, who we did not extend a qualifying offer. Why the hell not, Jerry? Doesn't matter, because he took a prove-it 1-year deal on himself with the San Francisco Giants, pitched his heart out, and pitched very well. And was able to be rewarded with a 6-year, $162 million deal with the New York Yankees. Carlos Rodon, his childhood team, I believe, was the Yankees, and he ends up there as a pinstripe. Painful to watch, but the fact is they've got a great left-handed starter, a guy that can throw some heat, has an arsenal, and will pitch some big innings behind Garrett Cole. I think in front of Nestor Cortez, and really solidifies the 1-2-3 punch of this Yankees rotation. Carlos Rodon, the newest Yankee. Alex, this one pained you as much as it pained me?
Yeah, it did, because I think we were both always, we talked about this last year too, but we were both always on like the Rodon camp. Yeah, he couldn't stay healthy, but you could see so much potential every time he pitched. And he's realized it. I think the contract is a bit misleading. 6 years, 162 is not what they're getting. They're getting a premier ace. Rodon, 2 years in a row now, has had Cy Young caliber seasons. It's a guy who, if he was 28 and didn't have the injury history he does, I think he'd be commanding a $300 million deal. I think he's that good. And the only concern is, yeah, he's 30 now, without a lot of innings because he's been hurt, which I think it's kind of a weird thing for pitchers. Being hurt can save your career lifetime, oddly. But injury history. So, and he didn't stay fully healthy last year. It seems like the Knicks come up, but still, you're getting an ace. And now you talk about, I always talk about rotations come playoff series because it changes a whole ton. A team that's expected to probably win the division, you're now going with a 1-2 punch of Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, and you're following that up with Nestor Cortez and Luis Severino. I thought before the Frankie Montas injury, when he goes down for the year, which was a couple weeks ago, which is obviously a huge blow, a guy they traded a lot for last year, I thought this could be like not only the best rotation in baseball, but like in terms of strikeout numbers and like the stats you want to see, be one of the better rotations we've seen in the last 10 years, really. Well, still can be too. Still can be.
It's kind of what's pained the Yankees in playoff series is who do they turn the ball to for that game 3. It's been Severino for a long time, and he has pitched well enough to keep the Yankees competitive in these games. Unfortunately, they just haven't been able to pull it out. I think, like I said, Rodon gives you the fact that you can give him the ball in a game 2 series. You got Cole that will go game 1, and he'll be ready by game 4. And you got Nestor, who will probably throw at least 6 quality innings in a playoff start. So I agree with you. I think this was a big move for the Yankees. Obviously, re-signing Aaron Judge was priority number 1, and then finding another very, very quality, ace quality starting pitcher, in that being Rodon, is an excellent move from Brian Cashman and the New York Yankees. I know my Yankees fans were pumped, and we're asking, how do you say it? Do you say Rodon? Do you say Rodon? How do you say it? We always said Rodon. We'll miss you, but unfortunately he'll be pitching in a Yankees uniform from here on out.
I gotta say, he looks fucking incredible in a Yankees uniform. He looks beautiful. I mean, he's got I know they have the facial hair rule, but clearly not like a chest hair, because he's got that.
He's got a mustache going.
Yeah, that's going to be gone, though. Okay, he can do a mustache, though. Mm-hmm. So him and Ness are going to have the mustaches going back to back. And Los, I don't know if you haven't watched him pitch, you need to, because it's electric what he does with the ball. But also, he wears no undershirt, and everything is he
just lets it out.
A couple buttons down. I mean, and he's a tank. He's like 6'3", 250. Like, this is a big boy we're talking about. I'm excited for him. I hate that it's the Yankees, but at the same time, it's cool for him, and I'm glad he's going to get the spotlight, because I would bet right now, with health staying in line, I think Cole and Rodon are in the top 5 of Cy Young voting.
Yeah. No, it puts him back into the AL, a conference or a league he's very familiar with after being drafted in a high first-round pick by the White Sox, seemingly, 10 years ago now? Maybe 8 years ago around now?
It's 9 years. 2014, I think.
Obviously, injuries kind of held him back in a White Sox uniform. Finally was able to find consistency in that last year. Before signing the Prove It deal in San Francisco, like we said, now signing with the Yankees, your newest second arm out of the pen for the Yankees, Carlos Rodon. Moving on to the city that we live in, Chicago. The Cubs made a big deal signing a former World Series champion, I think 29, maybe 28, and the fact is this shortstop will be coming to Chicago and playing for the Cubs. It's going to be Dansby Swanson. I know Rick was excited about this one, as Jed Hoyer and the Cubs had said they were going to be competitive. They're trying to be competitive. They're trying to retool and rebuild as they say goodbye to all those stars, seemingly now years ago at this point, and obviously watching Contreras sign with the division rivals, the Cardinals. That one was painful, but bringing in someone like Dansby Swanson, who will be very good for this Cubs team, paired up, I guess, with probably Nico Horner, I think is his second baseman, Perriman. So it's a very good 1-2 punch in the middle of the infield. A World Series winner, so a little experience as you've watched one walk out the door, you bring another one in, this one being younger, and it's for 7 years, $177 million. Dansby Swanson, newest Chicago Cub. What do you got?
Yeah, I like the signing. I think I've always underrated Dansby, just because, I don't know, he doesn't have any popping tool. He's a good defender. He's got good average, good power, but it's all good. There's not much great in this game, but what is great is that he's got a lot of good in a lot of categories, so that's why he commands such a big deal. I think the Cubs had to get one of these shortstops, and they did. If I had to have my choice, I think he's probably the worst of this free agent class, but
out of the Turner, Bogarts,
out of
Swanson, looking at it, Correa maybe, I could see
boys,
that.
I think he was probably the worst. But I will say, this dude, if you told me he was on that Cubs World Series team, he'd fit right in. Mm-hmm. He is a perfect Cubs player. The fans gonna love him. He just fits to me he's a very Cubs player. I don't know. Yeah. But part of that's because he's white, I wouldn't say he's a perfect White Sox player. It's very different. It's not saying anything about the fan base or anything. That's just I don't know. It's who they've had as a lot of the key players. So I think the Cubs fans will love him. I think he's going to be a staple in that lineup. And you just get a really good shortstop. So I talk about this with baseball, especially for a team like the Cubs. Contracts are not a bad thing when you're willing to spend. So whenever you get good players, I think it's always a plus if you're a spending team, which the Cubs will probably be soon again.
And you kind of saw it throughout this offseason. I think there was a lot of 1 year or 2 year deals. I mean, they brought in the likes of Trey Mancini, Eric Hosmer, Cody Bellinger. So that they had their signings. They brought in Jameson Taillon. Obviously, that was their biggest pitching signing with some years to it. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it's a quality role, and I think it solidifies this offseason for the Cubs. They needed to get one of these shortstops. I do kind of agree with you. I think it is one of probably the worst of the bunch, but still getting an all-star shortstop in Dansby Swanson. And it was a big signing in which the Cubs fans had been asking for. So it was received. And the fact is, it $177 million doesn't compare to the White Sox franchise-breaking left fielder Andrew Benintendi leaving the New York Yankees after his trade deadline move from the Kansas City Royals. Goes back to the Central Division as well with the Chicago White Sox for a 5-year, $75 million franchise-shattering deal, breaking Yasmani Grandal's current deal with the White Sox. Andrew Benintendi, a left-hitting outfielder, a quality outfielder, a guy that will play a lot of games and will have a consistent bat. Maybe won't have the power numbers that you're necessarily looking for, but you're hoping for a more healthy Eloy Jimenez and obviously a standout year from Andrew Vaughn and co. and maybe a resurgence from Yoan Moncada, which people are seeming to be hopeful for, even though I still really just don't think it's there at this point. But Andrew Benintendi adds a lot of more consistency, a little bit more reliability for this rookie manager, Pedro Grifol, in the Chicago White Sox, signing that 5-year, $75 million deal. How are you excited about our new Andrew Benintendi, newest White Sox?
Yeah, so when the deal got announced, I wasn't too excited because it was fresh off Jose leaving, and I was just salty. But as spring training has started, I've started to look at this top 4 lineup, and I see Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, Benintendi, Eloy Jimenez, and I get excited about that. We have a lefty bat who can drive in runs. He can drive the ball to the gap. I think he could have a pretty good homer year in the cell, or in guaranteed rate field, I should say. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he has 20 homers.
No, I wouldn't either. I don't expect 30. I really don't.
No, but again, I would be surprised by 30, but not too surprised because he's getting a ballpark upgrade, and I don't know. I could just see him hitting homers in the G spot.
In the G spot.
But I like this. The White Sox were trying to trade for Benintendi when he was a prospect in the Chris Sale trade, and the Red Sox wouldn't budge, so they got Moncada. Since that day, I think they've been looking for this exact player. I mean, we've been looking for a lefty bat who can hit for average and drive in runs. Literally what Benintendi has become, right? I think it's a good fit. He's the outfielder. That's another good tidbit we should mention. He does play the outfield, unlike what the White Sox had last year. But you can see that being like a pretty big upgrade, like a slightly above average defender in the outfield is kind of a huge deal. In the lefty bat. So, I don't know. I'm excited for this. Look for him to have a big year. I think he's in a good spot. He's surrounded by a lot of talent. I can just see a lot of innings for the White Sox this year where Tim Anderson gets on, Luis Robert does something, and Benintendi cleans up. And then you're met with Eloy. And to me, that, like, when I look at other teams, that would be something I'd be afraid of if I'm playing the White Sox, right? You just see that clear. Or, like, a Tim Anderson double, all of a sudden you're kind of expecting to score a run in the first inning, which is different. So I like the move a lot.
Oh, it is. It's a big move for this team. I think they're hoping that in a season that saw the White Sox be able to get people on and not necessarily drive them in. They had Jose Abreu, who was consistent and was great, and we will always miss. Unfortunately, he's now with the Houston Astros. But the fact is, they're hoping Eloy Jimenez can stay healthy, Luis Robert can stay healthy, and those guys, those pairing, and the three, maybe even throw Yoan Moncada, they can match for more than what Abreu has brought for this team for the last 9 years, and then hopefully the fact that Benintendi can be that consistent presence in the outfield. No more Sheets, no more Vaughn, no more heart attacks when the ball's hit to these guys, and they're potentially really not coming up with the ball because they're not supposed to, because they're just not outfielders. So Andrew Benintendi is a big signing for this White Sox team that looks to rebound after a very disappointing season. But yeah, no, I mean, if we look at, before I want to turn the page on the 2022, early 2023 free agency period, we're going to look at the numbers, the top three spenders and the total spent in the free agency period. Alex and I kind of went over them pre-pod, but they're quite, it's kind of astonishing how much was spent this year. The New York Yankees spent $573 million. Obviously, a lot of that, actually probably
Judge and Rodon.
85% of that is probably tied to Aaron Judge, and the rest being maybe a little less than that, Rodon, but high percentage of that going to the Aaron Judge contract. That was the number one priority for the Yankees in the offseason, so to be expected. Next, Steve Cohen and the Mets. They spent $423 million. The New York Mets, the second place finishers in the free agency award show, spending $423 million, adding a ton of pieces, adding international signings, adding Verlander. There's consistency. I mean, you've got Verlander and Scherzer, right? It's ageless, maybe. It's guys that do.
It's kind of a fun, and Kodai Senga. International. What a fun rotation there.
Absolutely. So the New York Mets were big spenders. The Philadelphia Phillies, bringing in Trey Turner and some other assets, spent the third most, spending $399 million, just $1 million short of the 400 mark. But those are the top three spenders of this year's free agency period. The total spent this year, $3.67 billion. Just in the list I read off, you almost got $1 billion there. So it's not surprising throughout all the ball clubs, but a ton of money spent in this year's offseason. Obviously, the talk of the MLB, will there be a free agent, or will there be a salary cap implemented? At some point. We'll see what Rob Manfred has cooked up, but that's what kind of happened on this year's free agency. We apologize for the little hiatus we took, but it was a fun and exciting free agency period for those teams out on the East Coast and some other out on the West, as the San Diego Padres obviously spent a ton of money as well. Moving on, as we talked about in the beginning of February, and now we are in spring training. Baseball is back. Your ball clubs are playing it seemingly every day. You'll see your teams playing sometimes twice a day with A and B clubs, playing here in the Cactus and the Grapefruit leagues. It's exciting. We have had some big stories drop so far in this year's spring training. That being so much being the LA Dodgers. They took a kind of a hit, obviously, in free agency, losing the Turners ×2, Justin and Trey, and now they've lost their young infielder Gavin Lux, unfortunately, for the rest of the year with a torn ACL in spring training. The Dodgers kind of starting the year off in a little bit of the dumps, losing another infielder. What do you got on the Dodgers so far?
I just think this is an interesting team to watch because they lost a lot, right? They lose Justin Turner in free agency. They lose Trey Turner. So they lose both Turners, actually, yeah. And then Gavin Lux, who's expected to kind of have this bigger role, obviously a pedigree prospect, goes down with a torn ACL. They do trade for Miguel Rojas. The rotation adds Syndergaard is still elite. They're probably going to get the most out of Syndergaard because that's what they do. Bullpen still looks great. But you're looking around the lineup, and it's still really good. JD Martinez, I think, is a good bat to bring in now that they have a DH, A good move there.
That removes the fact that, yes, they brought in Martinez to DH. Max Muncy will play third, which Lux was kind of seeing time at Justin Turner had locked down for so long. Shortstop being Trey Turner, and then Lux was playing second.
Yeah,
I believe. So now that you're gonna be seeing, it's gonna be Muncy at third, Trey Turner. Rojas at short.
Short, yeah.
And then you're going to have obviously Freddie Freeman at first, and you're kind of seeing who takes the grab for second base.
They have this guy Miguel Vargas, who I think is a good a Dodgers prospect. Wasn't high overall, but has become a really good prospect. But again, it's a test right now. It's like, okay,
it's a little bit of a question mark.
You lose a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about the production. You lose Justin Turner and Trey Turner alone are huge production. Then you lose Gavin Lux. The team's a lot different.
Oh, I think this is I think the San Diego Padres are chomping at the bit in the fact that they feel like they can finally change the guard of the NL West and take the reigning champs of California.
Yeah.
You have to be at this point because
the rosters look better.
Yep.
I will say one guy to look out for, because right now Jason Hayward's penciled in as the fourth outfielder. I don't think he's going to make the roster, and that's because it's a guy who I think he had like 400 in like 10 games for them last year. His name's James Outman, AAA. He was bad. I looked into him today because I remember he had a big year. AAA, he was batting like 350 with a ton of homers. Just don't be surprised if he's all of a sudden like in that like borderline all-star breakout area, because that's what the Dodgers do. Again, like when these prospects come up, they just seemingly succeed a lot. So I'm just saying, watch out for James Outman. I don't know if he'll make the roster. I think he's better than Jason Hayward at this point, but the Dodgers do Dodgers things. So you trust what they do though. So, but definitely a team to watch.
Yep, and you'll see Chris Taylor obviously playing every position in the outfield and the infield. But no, it will beg the question: can Mookie Betts continue his stellar career and really step up for this Dodgers team? I think he and Freddie Freeman really will need to. They will lean on them a lot offensively. And two guys that have proven that they can do it. It's just it's going to be the pressure is on because you don't have guys like Trey Turner and co there to solidify the lineup.
Another thing I just thought of: how much second base are we going to see out of Mookie Betts?
It could happen.
It could be because he played a little last year. It would be kind of interesting if he becomes like a more regular at second base.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Great but that's a great outfielder. I mean, he's just
he's great at everything. I'm just I like watching him play second base because it's interesting,
without a doubt.
But I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Moving on, I think Alex wanted to throw this one on tonight's slate. It is Seattle prospect who did see a lot of time in the MLB last year and kind of back and forth between AAA, former first-round pick Jared Kelenic, who did have a multiple home run, I think, consecutive day in the last week or so.
He's got 3 homers in 4 games. So
yeah, so Jared Kelenic is Alex. I'll let you lead on Jared.
Yes, I want to talk about it because this was like one of the most hyped-up prospects when he got called up. He was the big piece in that Edwin Diaz trade. But he kind of flopped. And I think everyone was looking at him like...
Well, we talked about him on this podcast.
We talked because we're like, what if? And now, because we're 4 games into spring training, he's got 3 homers. I'm going to talk about him because I think if he has a breakout year, how cool is the Seattle team? You got him and Julio. Like, imagine he is like a borderline all-star player, which was not... It's lofty for any player, but he was expected to be that, right? What if he's made some changes? What if he's adjusted? What could this lineup be with him there? And how much fun could that be to see him and Julio standing next to each other in the outfield and just mashing for this lineup? So just something to look out for. I think he'll be a popular name in baseball circles because like he is such a big prospect. But yeah, watch out for Jared Kelenic. It will be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, it's a guy who hit, I think, around 140 last year. The Seattle will be asking for him to step up and produce for this team. We'll see what happens with Jared Kelenic, but the fact is spring training will be running till the end of this month. It'll be till March 30th. And yeah, it should be exciting to get your teams in the roster positions and the hunts that are out there. Should be figured out here in the next month, and will be exciting for April as opening day arrives. Obviously, we'll toss in the World Baseball Classic, so spring training might become a little dull for a week or two, but don't lose the excitement. Baseball is back in the air. But unfortunately, we got to go to a little bit of a less exciting conversation. Some of it is exciting because it's trying to speed up the game. It's trying to make 3 hour and 45-minute games closer to 2 hour and 20-minute games, which people are seeming to enjoy. I've got nothing against it. It's a little bit less of a traditional game, but the fact is the MLB introduced some rule changes this year. And let's get into the first one. It's a little bit of a different one, but the fact is it was for the safety of the infielders and base runners. The MLB has extended their bases. It will increase 3 inches from 15 to 18 inches square. So the MLB bases have grown. Any thoughts on that, Alex?
No, I mean, if it looks dumb, I'll be a little annoyed, but I really couldn't care too much.
It's only 3 inches. I mean,
I did see a photo of like an enormous base that was like a meme that got sent out.
I think that's the comparison right there.
Yeah, so it looks the same. If it's safer, great. I don't really understand. Like I get the logic, but I can see it still being as unsafe. So
Without a doubt. The next rule change that has been talked about for a little while has been the banning of the shift. The infield shift has changed. All infielders must now start on the dirt. They are not allowed to start in the grass. And both the shortstop and the third baseman must be left of second base, and the first baseman and second baseman must be right of second base. In the dirt, can't move until the pitch is thrown. That is the newest infielder rule change, banning of the shift, something that has been talked around for a long time. It is finally occurring. So those guys that hate the shift, that are going to benefit from it, or we've already seen it in the White Sox spring training with the Yasmani Grandal. So it should be exciting to kind of see the more offense that is produced because of this, because it's going to be harder to play ground balls. They're going to have to be reaching and obviously diving a lot more, and errors could be a lot more. The numbers could be up in errors and a lot more pass balls. So it should be interesting to see what happens with the banning of the shift. Lastly, the clock, the pitching time.
Can I say one quick thing about shift ban?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it presents a very exciting year because we had the shift change players' approaches, and some players just got phased out because they couldn't hit the ball the opposite way. I think it's just exciting to see who plays better. We talk about Yasmani Grandal, Joey Gallo. What's Joey Gallo get? Like, if you're a second baseman, good luck. You're just gonna get balls ripped at you. So yeah, I think it's interesting. One thing I do wonder, and I just wonder if this. I don't think it'll happen this year, but maybe down the road, I could see a team, if they have a really good defensive shortstop, putting him at second when a clear pull hitter like Joey Gallo's up. Let's just go put Carlos Correa at second base because we know the ball's going there. I doubt it, but you would think you might want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. The last rule change that was implemented this year was the pitching clock. Pitchers will now have 15 seconds to throw the ball with the bases empty, 20 seconds when there is runners on. Pitchers must begin their motion in that time or will be assessed a ball. Batters must be in the box by the 8-second mark or will be assessed a strike to the account. We did actually see this in a spring training game already, as it ended a tie in the ninth inning between the Red Sox and the Braves because the batter had not stepped in the box by the 8-second mark. That was I believe it was a 2-strike count. That was the third strike, and the game ended in a tie. Excuse me. And so you have already seen this rule implemented and used a lot.
A walk-off walk from that.
Yep. So it has happened. You are going to see the umpires have been encouraged to call a lot more balks and be much more stricter with the pitchers. Pitchers are also limited when a runner is on base to 2 disengagements. What's that meaning? That they can only throw over twice in one before throwing to home. Before that is I believe the runner is given a free base. So those are the big rule changes for this 2023 MLB season. Should reduce the time of games. Honestly, the big thing I've got on this is I don't think you're going to see a lot of complete games. I don't think you're going to see pitchers going to the 8th or 9th. The fact is they are throwing at such a quick rate, they're going to get tired. And yes, pitch counts matter, but when you're throwing consistently, at least, if you're throwing an immaculate inning, 9 strikes, 15 seconds, you're throwing a lot. And at 95, 90 mile per hour pitches, it's tough on an arm. So I do see this affecting pitchers and in their ability to kind of lengthen their outings in games.
Unless they all become Mark Burleys.
Yeah.
They realize that's actually kind of, some pitchers are going to struggle with this. Yeah. I wonder if some get better. Mm-hmm. And some just like the rhythm and they never understood that, They're out of their head. They're just, I got to get up and throw it. I wonder. The two throws over to a base I find interesting because you can't throw a second time now. So if you throw your second pitch or not pitch up, but if you toss over to first the second time, that guy's taking off. So you really get your one shot now, I think.
Yep.
That'll be interesting to see. Like, what if the runner starts going before you make your pitch?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the rule there? Because you have to be able to step off then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I think with all these rules, there's a lot of questions of how they're going to be implemented, what's going to go down, because there's a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they've defined it somewhere, but it still is there, regardless of how well you define it. Yeah, but we'll be interesting to see. I was kind of a hater on the pitch clock to start. I don't know if it's in playoffs. I couldn't find that. I hope it's not, because I think that it's a good part of the game to have in the playoffs. I think you should be able to throw over as much as you want in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with that. But then also, I'm just interested to see how there's going to be some manager fights this year. There's going to be a lot of coming out of the dugout on these calls, because they're going to happen. Like, they will. And when they happen in a crucial moment, I think there's going to be some blow-ups about this.
Mm-hmm.
I can already see Angel Hernandez fucking one of these up. Like, he's going to do something stupid.
Yeah. No, it is.
They're gonna have him calling the strike, and the clock is just gonna be like 3 seconds off. Like, you can pencil that into your bingo right now.
Yeah.
The Angel Hernandez missed call by like 3 seconds.
Yep. Well, that takes us from rule changes into our final topic for the night, the World Baseball Classic. I've got some odds that we'll cover. A little bit of how everything will break down. Pool A will be playing ball in Taiwan. Pool B will be playing in Japan. Pool A will have Chinese Taipei.
I don't know.
Netherlands, Cuba, Italy, and Panama. Netherlands squad, look for Xander Bogaerts to be leading that one. And Cuba, that's going to be a powerful squad. Luis Robert, Eloy's Dominican.
No, he's on the Dominican team.
But no, you'll see a powerful Cuban roster. Pool B has Japan, Korea, Australia, China, and the Czech Republic. Funny enough, I did see a video of the Czechs team. A lot of everyday people in that, and people that love baseball, and guys that have continued to play at a competitive level in their country, and are proud enough to be able to represent their country on the biggest stage for international baseball. Pool C will begin play on the 11th of March, and that will be in Phoenix, Arizona, with USA, Mexico, Colombia, Canada, and Great Britain. Obviously, the U.S. will be heavy favorites in Pool C, but don't count out Mexico, Canada. There's some impressive ball players from both of those countries. Pool D, our final pool, will begin play also on the 11th in Miami, Florida. That will host Puerto Rico, Venezuela, the DR, Israel, and Nicaragua. And I should have said Pool A and B. Pool A is beginning play on the 8th, and Pool B being the 9th. The quarterfinals for A and B will be in Tokyo, and the quarterfinals for C and D in Miami, Florida, before we see the semis and finals in Miami. This tournament will run until the 21st, so like I said, we will see a little bit of a dull period in spring training, but the heavy favorites so far, the Dominican Republic, the U.S. close behind, and I believe Cuba are the third favorites for the World Baseball Classic. Alex, what do you got on the WBC?
I mean, I could talk for days about this because I'm super excited. First off, Dominican, just go look at that roster. It's better than an all-star roster. And the Dominicans, when they're all playing together, there's just, like a lot of the Caribbean teams, there's just this electric energy.
Yep.
But it especially comes with the Dominicans because they just have they have a vibe around them. So we'll see some celebrating. We'll see some stuff over the top. There's probably going to be somebody on the U.S. team who complains about it, but, that's part of the fun of what happens here. But then I also love a lot of these also, like, smaller teams. Like, you got Italy, Netherlands, all these teams, like Panama's in it. What I like about it is you get some players who are top players in other leagues. Mm-hmm. You get some prospects.
Yep.
And then you get some guys who have been out of the league for a little bit, right? Like, so you get this weird mix of players that come from all over, and it's really the only time you get to see them on a stage like this with, like, all the media around it. Mm-hmm. So I'm super excited. I just learned, let me make sure I'm saying or using the right word here, but the nickname for the Netherlands team, the Honk Ballers, that's pretty awesome. And I also just learned they have the what is it? The Japanese single season home run record player, Vladimir with a W, Valentin. So I'm just excited to see who he is, how he hits. But he hit 60 bombs in Japan one year, and that's the type of player I'm excited for. The World Baseball Classic. Obviously, you have the USA, Cuba, Dominican. Those teams are loaded, right? But then you get to see a lot of what the other countries have to showcase. Japan's going to be putting out a pretty sick lineup.
Yep.
That'll be fun to see because they have a good mix of MLB players, and obviously the Japanese league is great. So yeah, this just should be a fun tournament, and it's not only because of the top teams. It's because a lot of other random players. You're going to get some like high schoolers in this tournament who are just top commits who are, I think there's a guy in the Czech who's top, he's going to Georgia Tech, and he's going to be playing the World Baseball Classic. He's like a senior or something.
It's an awesome tournament. It's a fun watch. We will do some live streams for this without a doubt, and especially as we get closer towards the semis and the finals. But the World Baseball Classic will be exciting. It's starting here at the end of this week. No, sorry, beginning of next week should be starting the World Baseball Classic. I believe a lot of that coverage will be on the MLB Network, but look out on the interwebs to see where you can find those games. If you had to pick a winner for the World Baseball Classic,
Oh, easy, USA.
I agree with you.
Dominicans are the favorites, but
I agree with you. It's got to be the U.S.
Dominicans, if you're betting, bet on Dominicans,
Yeah.
I would say. They have the vibe and they have the best players.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to take the USA. Timmy Anderson, baby.
USA all the way. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up a fantastic episode of 3 Up, 3 Down. It was a pleasure to get back into the groove of things and talk a little baseball. It's exciting to have it coming back to us, and the regular season is really on the horizon as we're pretty much, I think, within 30 days of opening day. So look out for a ton of 3 Up, 3 Down content as we kick into the swing of things. Go check out all the podcasts brought to you by Star 6 Media. As we said earlier in the podcast, Alex and I are on another one, Slot Shot Podcast, a hockey podcast with Ross, a Boston personality that brings the takes and isn't afraid to kind of lay you out. But also go check out JCA Sports, Only Football, all the Star 6 Media podcasts. Go give Alex a follow at Northside _Sox. Give me a follow at SiffyMan. We'll have much more in store for us. I think we're going to try and get our shows out to you guys on Thursdays. But we'll see how things progress as we get towards the regular season. Alex, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, enjoy World Baseball Classic, enjoy spring training, and I'm excited for the year, so happy to be back.
Absolutely. Everyone have a fantastic night. We'll talk soon.